joining us on this session today. It's so important. As you know, the underrepresentation of women is something that we cannot emphasize. And for us to get to that place where we really need to be, obviously there's a lot of learning acquisition that needs to be done. So essentially today we have an interesting and, an interesting expert that's going to take us through this training. It's going to be impacting some knowledge, obviously, but I mean, we're so excited because there's so many people we're over registered, and we can only take about 100 people. So we love the social consciousness that's growing. We feel it's very important right now. We're even excited because women are interested in running for office. So yes, we might complain that we don't have enough women, but the big question is always, are women running, because you need to run for you to be able to win. You need to run to have a competitive campaign, right? So essentially today, one of the reasons why we wanted a subtle start to our series of virtual trainings that we're going to be hosting monthly was that we felt it was important to have some context, was important to help people understand the current situation, people understand the necessary guidelines and what currently obtained, so that way you can start thinking, am I ready to run in 2023? Am I ready to run in the next 4 years after that? Or when am I ready to run? And start asking yourself questions. As you know, sessions are not just about the facilitators, they're also about you. So we want this to be very interactive. Use the chat section to ask questions, to interact with yourselves. We just want it to be something very interactive and highly impactful. And obviously after this training session, we will look to you for your feedback and your review to ensure that we keep evolving, and then obviously that we keep revising our approach as well. So welcome again. My name is Elective Fabarodi. I'm one of the co-founders of ElectHER. I'm sure my partner, Bossady George Organ, is on the call as well somewhere, but we're really delighted to have you, and we really hope you have an interesting session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ibijoke. So we're welcoming Ibrahim Farouk. He's going to be our facilitator for today. Hi, Ibrahim. Can you hear us?
Yes, we
Hi,
can
welcome.
hear you. Thank you very much. Hi, Morenike. And I can see that we have so many people on the call. And I'm really excited to be speaking at the first virtual training for ElectHER. It's an honor, and thank you for the invitation to speak. My session today is just talking about the fundamentals for running for elective office in Nigeria. And it's just going to be a light conversation to tell you what you need to know, especially if you're considering running for elections in 2023. And if you're not considering running for elections, just maybe at the end of this training, you'd be a bit more inspired to bridge that gap of women's representation, and you would have some more knowledge around what it takes to run for office. And like Ibijoke said, there's definitely a huge representation gap, and part of the work that ElectHER is doing is around bridging that gap. I'm going to just start to share my screen, and we can have a conversation around what's going on. So I hope you can see my screen. If you can see my screen, you can just drop a message in the chat box as well. I'm going to try and make this as participatory as possible, and we can also have conversations in the chat box as I'm speaking and as we're learning from each other. So this isn't just about you learning from me. This is also about me learning from you and from some of your experiences and what you think and what you feel about running for office and women's participation as well. Like I said earlier, this is politics 101. So it's basic. It's the fundamentals of running for office. What are those fundamental things that you need to know? And we're going to be looking at quite a few things. Ibijoke, I think Morenike has spoken about the ElectHER Academy. And what the Academy seeks to do is to bridge the knowledge gap for African women in politics. And because of that huge gap in representation, especially in decision-making spaces. So you're talking about in political parties, you're talking about in elective offices across the country. And in the course of the presentation, and I'll be sharing some data and some statistics that just paints a picture around the participation of women, especially in elective offices, and that just gives you an idea of why this is so important for us to first bridge the knowledge gap and also bridge the representation gap that we currently have. Secondly, it's just to introduce myself. My name is Ibrahim. I work with Yaga Africa, which is a non-governmental organization that is based in Abuja. And I've had about 10 years experience in working on many different fields, especially around democracy and governance, building social movements and community organizing, working around some peace and conflict issues as well, youth participation and gender issues. And you might be asking why the facilitator for the first training is not a woman, but here you are today. Interestingly, my first job was with a gender-based organization in Jos, and I actually worked on promoting the political participation of women in northern Nigeria. And it's very interesting because that is one of the regions that has the lowest participation of representation for women, especially in elective offices. But that's just a little about me. But today is mainly about you, everyone who is on this call, who is attending and who is listening to me. But so to get into the meat of today's training is, what are the fundamentals? What are those fundamental things that anyone who wants to run for office in this country needs to know? And at the end of this training, I hope that at the end, after we spend some time together, we're able to understand the basic requirements for running for office, understand a bit more about INEC, its provisions and guidelines, and what we have in our political party systems as well. And we'll also look at a bit of a breakdown of political seats in Nigeria. So what offices are up for grabs? What are those elective positions that we should be setting our eyes on as we're looking towards 2023? If that's fine, it's just three simple topics. What are the basic requirements for running for office? What are the INEC provisions and guidelines? And what's just a bit of a breakdown of the political seats that we have in our country. And the training is just going to be looking at different sections really quickly. We're going to look at what the Constitution and what are some of the legal frameworks for running for office, and a bit of a discussion around what is theoretical and what is practical. I'm also going to be inviting someone who has run for office to share some of her experiences and talk about why we need to have women represented in our country's politics and decision-making spaces. So first of all, around the constitutional and legal frameworks for running for office. And the subheading just kind of tells the story itself of where I am going and where I'm just going to lay a foundation. These are some of the frameworks that I'll be speaking about. The first is the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. And lawyers and students of the law would say the Constitution is the ground norm for everything that we do in this country. Basically, it's our holy book as a country, and it guides our political behavior, it guides our political actions, it sets the boundaries and the limits and provides just what are the fundamentals that everyone needs to know. Anyone who is interested in running for office, what are those fundamental things that you need to know that are contained in the Constitution? We also have the Electoral Act, which was passed in 2010, but has also been amended and is also currently going through another process of amendment. But the Electoral Act, as we have it currently, what does it say? What are the fundamentals within the Electoral Act that anyone who is running for office also needs to be aware of. Another legal framework that's very important for anyone who is interested in running for office, basically the political party constitution. And regardless of the political party that you belong to, there are frameworks and there are guidelines within the political party constitutions that everyone who is running for office on the platform of that political party needs to be aware of. And then finally, a brief conversation around what are INEC's guidelines for the elections. And so my first, just to jump straight into it, is to ask the question, what does the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria say about the fundamentals of running for elective office? And I'll just be speaking to some of the sections that we have in the Constitution that just tell us what are those basic requirements, what are the fundamentals of running for office, and looking at the offices that are contained in the Constitution of Nigeria as we have it. So in section 65 of the Constitution, and especially subsection 1, talks about the provisions and the qualifications for membership of the National Assembly. And the National Assembly is a bicameral legislature, which is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives, which are two legislative bodies that we have. And it says a person shall be qualified for election as a member of, first, the Senate, if he or she is a citizen of Nigeria and has attained the age of 35 years. Well, the Constitution actually does not say she, but I put it in there because the language in our Constitution is definitely not gender sensitive, and it's more reflective of he. But there have been attempts to ensure that we have a more gender-friendly Constitution. However, a person shall be qualified for election to the Senate if he or she is a citizen of Nigeria and has attained the age of 35 years old. This is just the basics. These are fundamental. There are a few other requirements for running for office, including being a member of a political party and being sponsored by that political party. And this is important. When I say sponsored by the political party, it doesn't mean that the political party is going to fund your election. However, the political party is the only vehicle, is the only mechanism by which you can stand for elections in Nigeria currently, until we are able to amend the Constitution to allow for independent candidacy. You have to be a registered member of a political party, and we'll talk a bit more about political parties as we go along. But also, a person shall be qualified for election as a member of the House of Representatives if he or she is a citizen of Nigeria and has attained the age of 25 years old. The age of 25 years. And for many people who are aware of our politics and the politics of age reduction especially, you would remember that before 2019, to run for the House of Representatives, you had to be at least 30 years old. But with the age amendment advocacy and the constitutional amendment that was passed, also known as the Not Too Young to Run, the age for running for House of Representatives was reduced from 30 to 25. And this was also to open up the space to increase youth participation in elective offices. So this is qualifications for membership of the House of Assembly. In section 106 and section 107 of the Constitution, it says a person shall be qualified for election as a member of a House of Assembly. And we have these houses of assemblies across the 36 states. Each state has a House of Assembly with a certain number of House of Assembly members. The FCT, however, does not have a House of Assembly, as it is not a state, but a territory. But the qualification to run as a member, to stand as a candidate for a House of Assembly seat is if he or she is a citizen of Nigeria. And so this means anyone who is not born in Nigeria, who is not a Nigerian citizen, automatically is disqualified from running for office. If he or she has attained the age of 25 years, so if you are 25 years and above, you're qualified for elections into a state House of Assembly. Thirdly, if he or she has been educated up to at least a school certificate level or its equivalent. The educational qualification for running for office in Nigeria is very interesting because it does not say you have to have passed a school certificate. You just have to be educated at least up to a school certificate level or its equivalent. And this has also caused a lot of debate. When people have asked what is at least school certificate or what is the equivalent of a school certificate. Some have argued that if you have gone through secondary school, even if you did not graduate, that is at least a school certificate level, or either some other trainings that you have gone for could be seen as the equivalent of a school certificate. But that has been up for debate. But the fourth qualification is, as stated in the Constitution, say a person shall be qualified for election as a member of a House of Assembly if he or she is a member of a political party and is sponsored by that political party. And remember, I said earlier that being sponsored by a political party does not mean the political party is going to fund your election, but the political party provides the platform. That's the vehicle for standing for election. That's the way that you can access the ballots and be qualified for an election. Similarly, in section 131, it talks about qualifications for the office of the president. And if he or she is a Nigerian citizen by birth. So this is also very interesting because if you remember the previous section just say Nigerian citizen and does not qualify the type of citizenship, whether it is a naturalized citizen or a citizen by birth. But for the office of the president, it specifically says that he or she is a Nigerian citizen by birth, has attained the age of 35 years, is a member of a political party and is sponsored by that political party, and has been educated up to at least a school certificate level or its equivalent. So that's the qualifications for the office of the president. And there's qualifications for the office of the governor of a state. If he or she is a citizen of Nigeria by birth, also has attained the age of 35 years. If he or she is a member of a political party and is sponsored by that political party, and has been educated up to at least a school certificate level or its equivalent. So these are the offices that are mentioned in the Constitution. You might ask around local government elections because the qualifications for local government elections are not in the Constitution. They are defined by state laws. So before local government elections are conducted in each state, the State House of Assembly passes a law to deal with the matters for the local government election, including the age, if you're running for chairperson of a local government council or running to be a councillor of a ward. And these age qualifications and qualifications to run for these offices might differ across states slightly, even though generally they seem to be the same across board. So those are the basics that we have in the Constitution around running for office. I don't know if anyone has any questions around this, or if I should just go ahead and continue as well. Okay, I can see there's some things in the comment box, but so that is it about the Constitution. And as we go forward, I'll just encourage everyone who is interested in running for office in 2023, or anyone who is interested in the political process, basically, to get a copy of these documents. There are copies of the Constitution online. There are also copies of the Electoral Act online, and I'm just going to be speaking very briefly about the Electoral Act as well and what is contained therein. And so my first question is for everyone who is on the call is, especially if you're interested in running for office in 2023 or have run for office, I think I can see some attendees on the call who have run for office previously. I think I can see Sewese, and I can see some of your comments. But just to ask, and maybe you can just drop a comment in the chats, and just maybe a raise of hand or a thumbs up if you have a copy of the Electoral Act, or if you have read it and you know what is contained in the Electoral Act. You can just drop a comment. I can see that someone has a question, so I'm just also going to just take a break, and I think Nafisa Atiku wants to ask some questions, and I can see Angela has raised her hands as well. So I'll just take a slight break, listen to these questions, and continue. Hello, Nafisa.
Hi, Brian. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Nafisa.
Yes, so please, I have a question. I was having a discussion with someone on Sunday, and he was discussing how political parties usually have their cycles within the parties. That there is a point which you would get to, like, let's say, for instance, like a PDP or an APC, and you would want to contest for office. However, it would be too late for you to throw your hat into the ring because of the internal politics that goes on within the parties. Number one. Number two, the fact that they have already done their world congresses, zonal congresses, etc. So could you shed some light on basically the inner mechanisms of these different parties? Because we have the cycle itself, the INEC timetable, but it seems like the political parties within themselves have their own cycle that we need to be aware about, so that we know when to get in and know how to organize what we want to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nafisa. I am definitely going to be speaking about political parties very soon. But today our conversation is a bit more around the basics and the fundamentals for running for office. I'm sure that in subsequent trainings, we're going to have a bit more in-depth trainings around engaging with political parties. But I'm going to speak to the question around political parties, and I'm going to get to that presentation in a few minutes, and I'm definitely going to be addressing your question. But that's a great question, and you're already kind of getting us ahead to where we're going next. But like I said, I'll be talking about the Electoral Act, of course, and political parties, and some of INEC's guidelines. So I was asking the question around the Electoral Act as amended, and just again, emphasizing the importance of access to knowledge. Lawyers and students of the law says, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And when running for office, there's a lot that you need to know contained in the Constitution, in the Electoral Act, in the way that political parties operate, what Nafisa was mentioning, and as well as the guidelines that the Electoral Management Body, which is the Independent National Electoral Commission, releases during elections. But one of the things I'm just going to be speaking about, and I just picked on one section of the Electoral Act, for instance, that is very important for us to know, is the limitation on election expenses. And if you have a copy of the Electoral Act, Section 91 of the Electoral Act stipulates the limitation on election expenses for various offices. And so I'm just going to ask really quickly, if anyone knows, okay, if anyone knows how much, what is the finance limit cap if you want to run for president? And I'm just going to give about a minute or so. If anyone knows, you can drop the answer in the chat box. Does anyone know how much the limitation on election expenses for running for president is? Any takers? So Tilope says 10 million. Someone else says 1 million. I'm like, wow, really, guys, 10 million. Do you think President Buhari spent 10 million to get into office? I think just the cost of his nomination form was what, like 20 something million, just to buy the form. Someone said 25 million. I'm not sure. Yeah, so now we have a taker, someone who says 5 billion. Oh, okay. Bing, bing, bing. We have one correct answer, and I think Ruth has gotten the correct answer. But there's one question that I needed to address really quickly. And in the chat box was a question around dual citizenship. And the Constitution says to run for president and for governor, you have to be a Nigerian citizen by birth, meaning you have to have been born in the country, or both your parents and grandparents were Nigerian citizens, and the criteria for the various levels of citizenship are also in the Constitution. However, to run for National Assembly and state assemblies, it does not specifically state that you have to be a Nigerian citizen by birth. So you can be a naturalized citizen and run for office. But we definitely have politicians who have had dual citizenship. And one of them was even the president of the Senate in the 8th Assembly. So yes, to answer your question, citizens who have dual citizenship can also run for office, as long as you have not renounced that you're a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You're still qualified to run, especially for National Assembly and State Houses of Assembly. You could be a Nigerian citizen by birth and have also obtained citizenship of another country. You're still eligible to run for president and governor of a state. But back to our conversation on election expenses, and I was asking if anyone knows what the limits are. And the spending limit to run for president currently in the Electoral Act is 1 billion. To run for election as the governor of a state, the campaign limit is 200 million. If you want to run for the Senate, the Electoral Act says your spending should not exceed 40 million naira. To run for the House of Representatives, your campaign spending should not exceed 20 million. To run as a member of a state House of Assembly, your spending should not exceed 10 million. To run for a local chairman seat, your spending should not also exceed 10 million. And as the councillor of a ward, it should not exceed 1 million naira. There are also sanctions that range between fines and imprisonment, or both, if campaign expenses exceed these limits in the Electoral Act. However, our politicians and political parties have constantly flouted these spending limits. And so the current amendments to the Electoral Act is also trying to increase the spending limits. I know that, for instance, the spending limit to run for president is trying to go up from 1 billion to about 5 billion, because it says there's no point keeping it a lower limit when politicians constantly flout it and there are no sanctions against them. But it's very important to remain abreast of the conversation, to also ensure that when you're running for office, you know what these limits are and you're abiding within the limits of the law. the question has been asked around why are there campaign limits, and why are there also limits around how much an organization or an individual can contribute to a politician or to a political party. And basically this is because the law just seeks to protect our politicians and political parties from the undue influence of money. And the Electoral Act in Section 93 also talks about political party accepting or keeping gifts from any source, keeping an account and an asset book where they would record monetary contributions, the names and addresses of any person that contributes money that exceeds ₦1 million. No political party shall accept money exceeding 100,000 unless it can identify the source. So while this is there, many times, again, I said the spending limits and the sanctions here are constantly being flouted, and also because INEC does not have the capacity to enforce sanctions. The last clause talks about political parties filing a report after the elections. However, after the 2019 elections, only 4 political parties filed their reports. So I had mentioned around allowing individuals to contribute or to sponsor political activities might be seen as an investment. And that is why the law just seeks to protect politicians, to ensure that democracy does not become a marketplace and go to the highest bidder. I can see some comments in the chat box, which I'm going to take a look at and go. Some, of course, there's a question around tracking of the spending, and that was why from Zenret, and that was why I said political parties are to keep records and to file this report. Unfortunately, they do not do that. But for me and with the work that I do, I think it is very important that as we see a new crop of political actors, to ensure that we abide by the provisions of the law and ensure we're able to keep track of this. Olubukola is also asking around looking at increasing spending limits or enforcing the sanctions. And even for us, we've been thinking about that as well. The capacity to enforce is definitely very limited. And I think the easy way out for the commission now is around increasing the spending limits, so they do not really have to track how much. And Angela, I can see your question is, what is the issue around independent candidacy? There have been attempts many times by civil society organizations and individuals to get independent candidacy into our electoral process. However, in the last constitutional amendment process, the state houses of assembly voted against it, even though the National Assembly voted for it before it went to the state houses of assembly. Currently, there are some recommendations to include it in the amendment, the current amendment of the Electoral Act, even though the committee is not quite open to it. But the efforts to do that would keep on being pushed forward. So that's just the first session around the basics, the fundamentals for running for office as contained in the Constitution and in the Electoral Act. I'm also going to be talking about some INEC provisions and guidelines and around political parties as well. I know that we have a poll, so at this point, we'll just encourage everyone to answer the poll. Tell us how many political parties are registered in Nigeria, if you know. I will just take a few seconds for everyone to answer the poll. Hi, Morenike. Are we done with the poll? I can see the answers are still coming in.
Yes, they are. Can just give
Okay.
1 more
Maybe
minute,
two more
a
minutes.
minute.
Okay, a minute or two.
Yes.
Okay. So please, if you haven't answered the poll, if you can just take some time to answer, how many political parties are registered in Nigeria?
Hi, Ibrahim. So I think we can continue now. I think most people have voted.
Okay. It's very some very interesting comments around how many political parties do we have, and thank you to everyone for just taking out your time to answer the poll. The responses have ranged from 10 to 40 to 18 to 50. 50 political parties. And some you want to share the results. If you can see the poll results, and for 10 political parties had 4% of the votes. For 40 political parties had 25% of the votes. For 18, it had 38% of the votes, and 50 came really close with 33% of the votes. So we'll just talk about political parties a bit more. And Nefisa had already kind of asked a question, help us understand what's happening with political parties as well. So now we are following the protests in October. Sorosoke became, and forgive my pronunciation, became like a clarion call. It's like speak up, and without action, it means nothing to us. And for everyone who is serious about running for office in 2023, or if you're just serious about creating change within the political parties that we have, you need to join a political party, and join a political party yesterday. Because apart from just understanding the fundamentals of running for office, I have re-emphasized that the political parties are the only vehicles, are the only mechanisms through which you can run for elective office in Nigeria currently. With our current electoral system, you must be a registered member of a political party if you're going to run for office. Until the time when we're able to have independent candidates, you need to be a member of a political party. INEC has the approved list of political parties, but ElectHER is not going to tell you what political party to join, because ElectHER is a non-partisan organization and does not align with any political party. And so please ensure that you join a political party of your choice as well. To join a political party as well means that you have to go back to your ward level, because political party registration begins from the most basic political unit, which is a political ward. And you have to go back. And just recently, one of the political parties was conducting a registration and revalidation exercise. And you would see that members of the political party went back to their various wards and were registering at the ward level. So to run for office, that's your basic political unit, where you first go back to register as a member of a political party. Political parties are the structures through which everyone gets engaged, and I think I've re-emphasized all of that. It is through the political parties that candidates are nominated. Ideally, political parties should also provide campaign funding, should also help to rally voters, also help to set policy and government priorities and to form governments. This is the ideal. While we continue to working with our parties to make them ideal political parties, we cannot wait until our political parties are perfect and our political party systems are perfect before we join these political parties. I think it's our responsibility as well to ensure we join political parties and help change the way political parties operate from within as well. Now, to everyone who voted for 18 on the poll, congratulations. Yes, we do have 18 political parties that are currently registered in Nigeria. For the 2019 election, there were actually about 91 registered political parties for that elections. However, the election management body, INEC, had deregistered some of the political parties following the 2019 general elections and had left 18 political parties. And if you can see on your screen, this is the current list of political parties that we have, unless political parties are going to be further deregistered. And I also suspect that for the 2023 general elections, INEC might also register some more political parties. But for anyone who is thinking about running for elective office in 2023, you should be a member of a political party and a political party of your choice. And there's a list of 18 political parties for you to choose from, and that you can join and start to engage with those political parties. To answer Nafisa's question a bit around how political parties operate, I had mentioned that goes a bit more beyond the understanding the basics of running for office. But yes, political parties have congresses where party officials are chosen, and sometimes flag bearers for various elections are also elected. There are conventions, sometimes also change the leadership of the political party or to take major decisions that might affect the political parties. The interesting thing, and that's why we are also having this conversation, is that political parties operate differently. The way party ABC operates will not be exactly the same way party XYZ operates. And each political party has their own political party constitution. And if there's a political party that you're interested in, again, is to encourage you to look for the constitution of the political party and see if you agree with what is contained in their constitutions and you are attracted or more drawn to a specific political party. And if not, you can find a political party that you feel comfortable with, whose values are also values that you share. Unfortunately, many of the political party constitutions, as we have them, are are very similar. So as you start to look at the different political parties, just also be ready to see so many similarities between our political parties. But you need to join the political party to understand that process. And Nafisa was speaking about it around when congresses are being held, the elections of ward officials, when conventions, the inner workings of the political party, the internal politics and dynamics of political parties, how delegates are chosen, for instance, how the executive have an influence over delegates. And I think this is going a bit into a deeper conversation. But I hope that subsequently there's also a more in-depth training around engaging with political parties, because they've become so important for us as we seek to run for office. But I'll just try and move forward a bit more so that we can close at 2 o'clock, like we had planned. There's also a conversation and still talking about the legal frameworks, constitutional and legal frameworks. If you remember, I started up with the conversation on the Constitution and the qualifications for running for office as stated in the Constitution. I had also spoken about the Electoral Act, and I had just picked a few sections of the Electoral Act for us to look at. I'd just finished speaking a bit about political parties and also understanding political party constitutions and the inner workings and the dynamics of those political parties as well. And then finally, on this section is just to talk about INEC's regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections. And for each election cycle, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, releases a set of regulation and guidelines for the conduct of the elections. And these guidelines can be found online. It's public information. It's on INEC's website as well. So I encourage you that after today's training, to go online and just Google 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and download a copy and read it. Google Electoral Act 2010 Nigeria and download it and read it, and maybe Google XYZ Party Constitution if that's the party you're interested in. You can Google INEC regulation and guidelines for the conduct of elections, and you would find it. And this just talks about many things, including the use of the card readers, for instance, what are the guidelines around polling units and voting points. And these guidelines, if you can see the screen, apply to the conduct of elections to the following offices. Also, because INEC is constitutionally responsible for the elections that are stated in the Constitution, INEC cannot regulate and make guidelines for the conduct of local government elections in Borno, for instance, because that is under the purview of the State Independent Electoral Commission in that state. But INEC also has its own guidelines, which just form part of the legal frameworks that is very important to understand for anyone running for office, which applies to the conduct of elections for president and vice president, for governor and deputy governor, for the National Assembly, which is the Senate and the House of Representatives, for the state houses of assembly, and then for the chairpersons and their vice in the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja, and for the councillors as well. So that's great. I'm going to just take a break and we can go into a Q&A session. So if there are any questions or any comments from this last section before we jump into the next one. So Morenike, are you moderating the Q&A session or is it open?
It's open, so just unmute yourself, signify or indicate. Okay. Bukola, Busola. Sorry.
Busayo.
Okay. Okay, great.
Hello?
Hello, Busayo.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the session. I'd like to know, is there a deadline for registration of political parties with INEC? You get what I mean?
Yes, I get what you mean.
And then what do you require to form a political party?
Okay. I think those are very great questions, and
Thank you.
INEC has those qualifications for a political party. If I remember previously, each political party needed to have some sort of geographical spread, meaning you need to have offices in Abuja and at least, I think, in each of the 6 geopolitical zones. But INEC has those criteria to register for a political party to ensure that political parties are not just regionally based, so to speak, but that they have a widespread and a wide ownership. On the deadline for registration of political parties, again, it's the responsibility of INEC as well when it comes to party registration and collecting all of those documents. I know one of the challenges that political parties have had is not registering on time, and so when it comes to election day, they don't seem to have had enough time to mobilize voters or constituents to win any of the elective seats, and as a result of that, many of them get deregistered after the elections. But I can definitely look for those criteria and share it with everyone who has registered on the call. So I hope that answers your question, Busayo.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Bukola.
Hi, Farouk. Thank you very much. So I have 2 questions and 1 comment. My first question is regarding citizenship. I knew you mentioned something about, I was a bit distracted, about running for the office of the president being attached to saying something about you must be a Nigerian by citizenship, right?
Yes, you must be a citizen by birth.
Oh, a citizen by birth. Okay, so like, does that mean people who were not born in Nigeria can't run for the office of the president? I want you to clarify that.
Yes. So if you're not a Nigerian citizen by birth, and I think it is chapter 3 of the Nigerian Constitution that talks about citizenship. There are some people who become naturalized citizens. You have lived in Nigeria for, maybe your parents are Ghanaian, but you are born in Nigeria, you've lived here for a certain number of years, and you now apply to be a Nigerian citizen. So you're
sorry to cut you in. Like, what I mean is your parents, grandparents, your family history, everything, you're Nigerian, but you were not born here and probably didn't even grow up at some point in your life in Nigeria. Does that?
So again, some of these things are open to interpretation. But if your parents and your grandparents are Nigerians, you're a Nigerian by birth.
Okay.
So, but if you remember, and just to give an example, when President Obama got into office, there was a lot of debate about where he was born and the nationality of his parents, so to speak, and whether he was born on U.S. territory. I think he was born in Hawaii. But it raised a lot of debates. So of course there would be questions around, can a Nigerian citizen with Nigerian parents who was not born in Nigeria be considered a Nigerian citizen by birth? For me, the answer is yes. Even though you are not born here, but you have Nigerian parents, you're still a Nigerian citizen by birth.
Okay, so that's the first question. Thank you. The second one is about party registration. Like, this thing APC is doing now for me is new. The whole revalidation thing. Is it just their party thing? Is that what INEC says? Like, do people have to revalidate? Okay, you've been a member, you didn't say your membership card like a former president, you didn't renounce the party. Like, is this something every political party does, or it's just APC doing their thing?
Okay.
That's the second question.
Okay, so I think it is the prerogative of the party to just make sure they can kind of clean up their register of party members, so we know how many party members we have, how many are active. We can clean up our records so that you're not just a party member by name, but you're actually a validated party member. That's why we have, it's called both a registration and revalidation exercise. So previous party members can revalidate, and new members can register to join the political party as well.
Oh, okay. So if they don't revalidate, that means they are no longer members of the party.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So thank you. My comment is still about election funding and all of that. I don't know, like, why is it difficult to enforce the sanctions? If you're putting a sanction for people, then you must have plans or ways of wanting to enforce that. I don't totally agree or believe INEC does not have a way to enforce that, because I think it's the easier way out they are taking. So if they increase for example, the presidential one you mentioned to 5 billion and people still flout it, so are they going to keep increasing and increasing? Don't we think they should find a way to enforce that? And when people see people actually go to prison or they pay fines for that, maybe they will comply, just maybe. I know.
Bukola, I totally agree with you. I think INEC is taking the easy way out. They will tell you that they are overburdened. They need an electoral offenses commission that focuses on some of these issues around elections, while they focus mainly on conducting the elections, which in itself is a huge task for them. But I really cannot speak on behalf of INEC, but I believe that it's very important for us to start to sanction erring politicians and not just let them get away with flouting the law and there are no fines or there are no sanctions. Okay, Morenike, are we taking a short break? Does everyone want us to take a short break, or are we good to?
We can take a short break. Yes, and just check as well with everybody. And the questions, some questions are also in the comment section and in the Q&A box as well. So we can take that maybe when we get back. So everyone, we're taking a 5 minutes break. You can get water, stretch your legs, and we'll be back shortly. Hi, Ibrahim.
Hey.
Yes, I think the 5 minutes is up, so I think we can continue with the training.
Okay, so okay, so we're back, and let me. Sorry. So welcome back from break, and we're going to go back into our presentation. If you can see my slides and if you can hear me, we've spoken about the constitutional and legal frameworks for running for office, and very quickly I'm going to talk about theory versus practice. And I can see that some of the attendees have a lot of practical experience around running for office. And I think it's very great to also have that cohort in the room that can also share from their experiences. And thank you so much for sharing your comments in the chat section as well. I think one thing that I have spoken about beyond practice is around theory and the need to access information and knowledge. And I keep on talking about, oh, get a copy of the Constitution and read it, get a copy of the Electoral Act and read it, get a copy of your political party constitution and read it, get a copy of the INEC provisions and guidelines and read it. And maybe also because personally I like to read, and one of the experiences and practical experiences of running for office that really stood out to me after I read her story is the story of Aisha Osori, who ran for House of Representatives in the FCT for the Amak and Buari Federal Constituency. And after the election, she documented her experience, and it's a book that she called "Love Does Not Win Elections." And again, I would encourage or ask you to get a copy of "Love Does Not Win Elections" by Aisha Osori and just read it. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to share some lessons from Aisha Osori's "Love Does Not Win Elections." And in her book, she puts down some lessons and says, from her experience of being a candidate for running for office and all of the challenges that she faced, there are a few lessons that you need to learn. So we can sit here and theorize about running for office and what are some of the basics and some of the fundamentals. But there's also a practical aspect to it. And I hope when we open up the next session for questions and answers, we can have some people who have run for office before also just share some practical experiences very quickly. But I'll just talk about the lessons very, very quickly. One of the first lessons, and there are about 10 lessons that she talked about in her book, but I'll just be speaking to a few of them. And one of the things Aisha said in her book, "Love Does Not Win Elections," is you have to discern. Now, it says everyone can help you, but it would cost you. And I think this talks about the cost of Nigerian politics and the fact that once you signify that you're running for election, it's almost like you've become everyone's benefactor. And almost everyone is trying to get something from you somehow. You also have to be able to discern between who is an opportunist and who genuinely wants to help you. It is very interesting when she said in politics, and these are direct quotes from her book called "Love Does Not Win Elections," where she says in politics, people get paid on earth, not in heaven. So everyone who is willing to offer you help also wants to get something from you. You call people to your house for a meeting, or even if you go to their own house for a meeting or their own office for a meeting, they expect that when you leave, you also leave behind an envelope as a way of saying thank you for their time. But she also adds that even if you live by this creed that everyone can help you, but it would cost you, there are still no guarantees. And those are just some of the challenges of engaging within our political space. Another lesson from Aisha Osori's book. She says, make friends with the first ladies. So these are the wives of the governors or wives of local government chairmen, if you have a local government chairman, or the wife of the president. I know very interestingly now, even in the National Assembly and State Houses of Assembly, there's an association of spouses for members of the National Assembly or State Assemblies. But Aisha's lesson here is around make friends with the first ladies. And she says they are useful to both male and female candidates. And she specifically mentioned one current governor who was friends with a former first lady and how that also helped him. She said you might not think you need them, but then one day you might decide to run. So currently, maybe you're not thinking of running, but even if you are thinking of running, cultivate those relationships with them, because they are also influential in their own right and are able to advocate for increased representation and participation of women. And she says you'll be glad you invested in that relationship with them. But still, remember that there are no guarantees, even when you make friends with the first ladies. I remember from Aisha's experience, she also tried to reach out to the first lady at that time, but still, there was no guarantee that that was a path to success. Lesson number 3 from Aisha's book, she says, have your tax documents ready. And this is so important. She says, you may not think if you think you might run for office one day, or if you have a confirmation screening or a screening for a hearing, have your tax certificates up to date. If you're thinking of running for office in 2023, please make sure all your tax documents are up to date. Because if you're waiting to get them during election season, it's a sign that you're a novice and you just understand the basics and not the intricacies of running for office. And everyone who would have an opportunity to milk naira or kobo from your pocket is going to do so, because they know that you're probably desperate during election season, and you need them to be screened to run for office. Lesson number 4 is treasure your primary and secondary school leaving certificates. And if you remember, when I was talking about the qualifications to run for office, and it says, oh, secondary school certificates or its equivalent. From Aisha Ostori's experience, and she was saying, even if you're running for office, even if you're a professor, if you have 100 degrees, you would be asked at your screening to come with your primary school and your secondary school certificates. They don't want to see whether you have a master's or a PhD or whatsoever qualifications you have received. Those are necessary to establish that you are eligible to run for office. And if you do not have them, you might have to swear an affidavit, or just to ensure you're eligible to run for office and you're not going to have any challenges with your candidacy. Treasure your primary and secondary school leaving certificates as well. Lesson number 5 says, do not assess your chances based on how much you are liked or on how much you think your opponent is disliked in the constituency where you're running for office. That is no guarantee that you're going to win. She says love is not a currency at the ballot. I think we have a typo in our presentation, but she says love is not a currency at the ballot. So you cannot exchange how much someone likes you for votes on election day. And I think she captures it very adequately with the title of the book itself, which says love does not win elections. And this is just pointing to the fact that no matter how liked you are, how loved you are in your constituency, no matter how much your constituency say, oh, we do not like your opponent, that's no guarantee that you're going to win. But maybe I should just also put a disclaimer that I have never run for office. So I can just learn from the experiences of others as well, and from speaking with, engaging, interacting with others who have run for office, and have an idea and share some of their experiences as well. I also know that I had reached out to someone who had run for office, and I hope she's on the call and she can join us. She can join us soon to share some of her experiences. So yes, Chikas is on the call. Chikas ran for House of Assembly in Plateau States. And so I'll just hand over the session to Chikas just to share some of her experiences and just let us know what are just those basics, those fundamentals. If you are just asked to give 1 or 2 pieces of advice for anyone who is interested in running for office, what would you have to say to them? Chikas Kumle, thank you so much for agreeing to come and speak on this training as well. So Chikas, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Mr. Ibrahim Farouk, for inviting me to share my experience and some of the key lessons for running for office. And I'm particularly excited this afternoon, and I appreciate Ibijoke and Abosade for the great work you are doing with ElectHER. Well, for me, having heard some of the key lessons you shared from Aisha Osori's book, Love Does Not Win Election, I completely align with the lessons she shared, because those are the realities of what you'll be faced with if you're running. And especially those lessons are for people that have been aspirants, that's people that were not able to become candidates in the election. But for me, I was privileged to be a candidate for the State House of Assembly in Plateau State under the platform of the SDP. And some of the lessons I'll be sharing is basically ones that will take you from not just being an aspirant, but once you win your primary ticket, these are some of the things you need to pay attention to. And one of the lessons, the first one is you need to undertake a full and honest assessment of why you want to run. It is said that passion cannot be faked. So once you have a passion for either trying to fix the education system, or you're just basically tired of bad governance, the people, the electorates will see it. They are going to see it through you. And as such, once you assess yourself, you can tell what exactly it is you are running for office for. What exactly do you want to fix when you get to office? And what are some of the reasons why you're running? Because it's not enough to just say you want to run and you want to become a member of parliament, or you want to become a governor. There must be a reason why you are running. So that self-assessment, that honest self-assessment will help you in the long run also, because in the course of running for office, a lot of things are going to come up. Like in our own political space, it's not just about competence. People are going to attack your own personal life. And being a woman, so many things do come into play. Some will say, oh, you're married. No, you're not married, or you're not married from our place, and all of those things. So once you have an honest conversation with yourself, it is going to help you to resist or develop resistance to all such destructive criticisms that has nothing to do with the office you're running for. Because from my experience, one of the things I encountered is while on the field, people don't even get to ask you whether you're fit for the office. They get to ask questions that has nothing to do with that office. Mr. Ibrahim mentioned people looking out for you to demob them, that's to give them some money after every meeting, and also asking you, where's your husband from? Okay, you're not married, you're supposed to be married, you're supposed to be taking care of children. What is it that women know about governance and all of that? So that first lesson I mentioned of self-assessment and having an honest conversation with yourself will help you to go through such experiences. And the second one is you need to know your limits, because politics, I must tell you, is tough. Knowing your limits will help you, because in the course of running for office, the political space is so tough and it can swing you to different angles that you didn't envision. As such, once you know your limits, it's going to help you to know what to take and what not to take. In the course of running for office, people are going to approach you with different things. People will meet you up. Okay, can you step down? Can you tell your followers to support a certain candidate? Can you back out from the race? Can you just make out some compromises? And as such, if you know your limits, you're going to know what you can take and what you cannot take. That is lesson number 2. Know your limits, and you have to be fearless. You should be courageous. And then being courageous here is not being arrogant, because people in our space mostly don't understand the difference between confidence and arrogance. You can be so confident to some extent that people think that you're being arrogant, especially for women, because they're not used to seeing women in this space. So you have to be fearless, know your limits, and be confident about your expressions of why you are running for office. The third lesson is you need to work on your relationships. Mr. Ibrahim mentioned that from Aisha Osori's book. Your relationship with people is one of the greatest assets you will have in politics, because there will be times that it's not the money that will be speaking for you. It is not your competence that will be speaking for you, but having good working relationship with people that are going to be in rooms where your name needs to be mentioned is very important. And as such, yes, we know we are not all perfect human beings, but to a reasonable extent, ensure that you do not have conflict or pending issues with people. Try as much as possible to see that the people you're relating with within or outside your constituency are people that can influence one or two things for you. Why I'm saying this is because once you're running, probably, okay, maybe for State House of Assembly or for federal houses of assembly, you are going to have family and friends who have people from all over. And that is where the relationship you're having with those people is going to influence the decisions they make on the elections day. And why you need to work on your relationship brings us to the 5th point, which is raising funds for campaign. You need money in politics. Resources, once we mention resources in politics, people get to think, oh, you're going to buy votes. No, you're going to use the money to just mobilize people against their wish. But in politics, money is very important. And why you need those relationships is because you need family and friends to support you with funds. As such, you need to work on that, and you need to pay attention also. I'm emphasizing on it because a lot of times, especially for women, one of the things that really stands against us running for office and winning election is because we do not have the financial capacity that men have once it comes to running for office. From logistics, from funding your campaign, to ensuring you have a successful campaign, down to the election day, you need resources. And in closing, I will say, if you want to run for office, you must not have it all figured out from start to finish. You need to just plan. And in planning, you need to work with people that support your vision. You need to get these people to understand also why you are running. And if you have those people, you should ensure that you have a very good campaign team. And in having a good campaign team, I would advise anyone not to think of having a very large campaign team, because one of the basic And some of the key people that you need in your campaign team is the campaign manager, the fundraising lead, and the communication director. Once you have these key basic and key people to ensure that these areas, that's your campaign, the person that will be coordinating your campaign, who is your campaign manager, is fit, then you have the fundraising team, people that will have contacts of people to help you raise funds, and the programs and mediums through which they can use to ensure that you have enough funds for your campaign, and also the communication director, because in politics, communication is very important. You need a campaign director to guide you whenever you're going to speak to the media, the statements you're going to be making, anytime you're talking about why people should support you, and also the print and social media angle where you need professionals to help you coordinate that appropriately. And in closing, again, I will say best wishes and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Chikas. And that was just a great way to just share from some of your experiences. Chikas ran for the House of Assembly in Plateau State in 2019 elections, and she ran such an amazing campaign, and it's just great to have you share some of your experiences. And I hope that subsequently as well, ElectHER can have you on more platforms to share some of your experiences. So Morenike, I'm looking at our time. I know we have one more quick session. Should I just run through it quickly and then we can wrap up for the day? Okay. So I think I will just
signify. If you indicate, then I'll unmute you if you have any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions, or should I just wrap up the rest of my presentation and then we can take all the questions at once? Or are there any questions?
I think we have one question in the Q&A box, or two. One question.
Okay.
Ife.
So Ife asked the question: do you think we would ever get to a point where ethnicity, state of origin would be a major factor in where one can run for office? I think currently it is definitely a huge factor. And I was just having this conversation with some colleagues a few days ago and saying, oh, look at how, for instance, former Senator Daisy Danjuma had to go back to her own state of origin, even though her husband was from Taraba. And another senator was able to run, Senator Grace Jackson Bent from Adamawa, where her husband is from, actually. And it's such a challenge. I know there had been attempts, for instance, to pass some legislation that helps to clarify that. Unfortunately, it has not passed. And it seems like our National Assembly has not been very friendly when it comes to legislation around gender. Not passing the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill, amendments to increase the political participation of women. It's such a huge challenge, even with the amount of work and the advocacy that various groups have been doing. So I think that, yes, we'll get to a point where it is no longer a challenge, but we must keep on working to get to that point. Okay. So
I think we can continue now. Yes.
Okay, so very quickly, I'll just talk about a breakdown of political seats and look at women's representation in elective office as well. So currently, there are 991 state houses of assembly seats, and this is such a huge number. So each state has. And as we're having the conversation, there's a poll that is going on. So just please feel free to answer the poll as we continue. But I said there are 991 state houses of assembly seats. And I think that the state houses of assembly are the greatest entry point for young people, especially, and then for women to learn about politics and to represent their constituencies as well. We also have democratically elected local government chairpersons for each local government area. Even though in some states, the experience has been that there haven't been elections because the state governor and the state independent electoral commission have not been able to put together modalities for that. And then in each state, there are also politically demarcated wards. And sometimes a local government can have 10 wards. And then there are elections for councillors as well to represent the various wards that we have. But beyond that, again, there's the office of the president and the vice president. And when you look at it in comparison, the office of the president and the vice president are just two offices. And compared to 991 state House of Assembly seats, if I was to place my bets on where women and young people especially can make a huge dent in our political system, I would be looking at the state houses of assembly or the House of Representatives, for instance. So we have 36 governors and their deputies. That alone is just 72 seats. It's still a drop in the ocean when you compare it to 991 seats, or 109 senators that we have, or 360 members of the state of the House of Representatives, which is another great avenue to increase participation of women and young people, especially when you look at the state houses of assembly, at the House of Representatives, at the National Assembly, and as we start to make more progress into those executive offices as well. But beyond that, just to also speak around women candidacy in the 2019 elections, and if you can see what's on my screen, the data from INEC told us that there were about 84 million registered voters for the 2019 general elections. And when INEC conducted a gender disaggregation of the registered voters that we had, there were about 39.5 million female voters, representing about 47% of the total number of registered voters, and about 44 million male voters, which was representing about 52%. So there's a slight difference, but you can see that the difference wasn't so much in terms of gender disaggregation of voters. But when we look at candidacy, and there were about 23,000 candidates in the 2019 general elections. But out of this, just about 3,000 were female candidates. And this is just representing 12% of the total number of candidates, just slightly above 10% when we're talking about candidacy. But male candidates made up 87% of the total number of candidates, and this was about 20,000 out of the 23,000 candidates that stood for elections in 2023. If I understand how this works, the gender that has a higher number of candidates is more likely to win a higher number of seats when it comes to the elections. And with ElectHER and the work that many other groups have been doing, I think what is important to see moving forward is an increase in the number of female candidates. And I like that we have this poll that is asking, when are you ready to run for office? Because we need to increase the number of female candidates if we're going to bridge that gap. We need to get female candidates into the political parties, into political party leadership positions, and ensure that women in political party leadership positions are also protecting the interests of women in the political parties who want to run as candidates. I think that this statistics is almost discouraging, so to speak. But on the flip side, it's also an encouragement to say, look, there's such a huge gap that we need to address and change the narrative around women candidacy. I'm also going to be talking about female representation in elective offices over the years, and I'll just wrap up very quickly with what the data tells us about women's political participation in Nigerian politics. Post the 2019 general elections, and if you remember, I had mentioned it earlier that my understanding of how this works is that the gender with more candidates is more likely to win more seats. And if you look at the graph, and when we did an outlook and this research on female representatives, female representation in elective offices, and especially looking at the National Assembly and the state houses of assembly, out of 1,543 offices that were up for grabs. So this is, you're looking at the State House of Assembly seats, the president and the vice president, the House of Representatives, which also has 360, and all of that. Women only won 68 seats. And this just represents 4.43%, while men have won about 1,473 out of about 1,500 seats. And that's about 95% of the seats. Again, it can be so discouraging, but you ask yourselves the question, what are we doing to bridge the gap? In the National Assembly, for instance, where there are 469 legislators, we can see that the Senate only has 8 female candidates. 8 female candidates were elected into the Senate after 2019, and only 13 females into the House of Representatives. And many times there's been an increasing decline in representation for women. When it comes to executive offices, the president and the vice president are both men. And there are only 3 women who emerged as deputy governors in Enugu, in Kaduna, and in Ogun states. And so that just shows us how there's such a low representation of women in elective offices post-2019. I'm glad that the poll is showing us that there's an interest in running for the 2023 general elections, but also beyond 2023, there's even much more interest. And I hope that today just helps to inspire you, especially for the group that's undecided about what you want to do, to make that decision to run for office as well. When we look at representation, and we just did some analysis around the geopolitical zones to see the number of women, you'd see that in some zones, in some geopolitical zones, the representation of women is almost alarming. In the Northwest, for instance, which is the largest geopolitical zone in terms of population and land mass, with 7 states, does not have any woman in either the Senate or in the House of Representatives. In the Northeast, we can just see one female senator and 3 in the House of Representatives. But we can see that in the southern zones, there seems to be more representation of women, and maybe that's a trend that we need to investigate and find out what is being done there that others might need to replicate. It's a similar situation in the state houses of assembly, where we have about 22 women, 44 women across the state houses of assembly. But we can also see the Southwest with a higher number, but the Northwest and the Northeast also seem to be lagging behind on those numbers. So what does the data tell us? And I'll just try and paint a bit of a picture. Looking back at 2015, or as far back as we can go from what the data tells us about the participation of women. And this is data from 2015. And in 2015, no State House of Assembly has met the 35% representation of women, which Nigeria is a signatory to for the Convention for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women and the Maputo Protocol, which are international instruments which Nigeria signed. In 2015, Bayelsa had about 29% of women in the House of Assembly, and Kwara had about 21%. In 2015, again, it showed us in averagely across the country, participation of women was only about 5%. Considering that women make up half or even more than half of our population. Again, in the Northwest in 2015, not one woman, not one female member in any of the state houses of assembly, and 14 states in 2015 showed that same thing as well. And this is data from 2011, 2015, 2019. And this is what the data is telling us basically. In 2011, we had 57 female representatives across the state houses of assemblies. Out of those 991 seats that are up for grabs, and this represented just about 5.75%. In 2015, it dropped from 5% to about 4.6%. In 2019, it's dropping some more, about a 2% drop. And so we're asking ourselves the question, what is going on? And it's important for us to have these conversations that would help to bridge the gap in knowledge about running for office and inspiring many more women to actually run for elective offices as well. This was also some data that we found around representation of women in the local councils from around 2015. Some states had no women either as chairperson or councillor. The South zone led a bit more when it came to women representation. But again, in the Northwest, it was a huge challenge. And this mirrored the situation in the state houses of assembly as well. But this table is a bit more holistic as well, going as far back as 2007, 2011, 2015, and 2019, and looking at the office of the president, the vice president, governors, and the National Assembly. Unfortunately, the data for the state houses of assembly is not captured from 2007 to 2019. That's why it is not shown here. But we can see that consistently, even though there are female candidates who have run for the office of president, they never get elected. So we've never had a female president or a female vice president. We've never had a female governor in Nigeria. In 2007, there were six female deputy governors. In 2011, that dropped to 1. In 2015, it went up to 4. But in 2019, again, we're now seeing a downward trend, and there are just 3. And I mentioned those states, Enugu, Kaduna, and Ogun. In the Senate as well, it seems like not much progress is being made. It's been between 9 to 7 female senators. But it seems like consistently there has been a decline in the House of Representatives. In 2011, there were about 26 that were elected. Same thing in 2011. But in 2015, it took a sharp dive down to 17, and we've seen it go even lower after the 2019 elections. But I'll just wrap up very quickly with my closing thoughts to say, for us to get a significant representation of women in government, there's a need for some kind of reforms at all levels, constitutional reforms, but even the political parties need to ensure that there is political inclusion and representation for women in political party leadership, and also as delegates, as candidates in all the political party structures. There are a lot of conversations around advocacy to political parties to adopt either a quota system or some kind of affirmative action to ensure that we can strategically intervene and bring these trends to an end or reverse the declining participation of women in Nigeria. Thank you very much. I know we're running out of time, but Morenica, we can open up the floor to take questions and comments. I can see there's a lot in the chat room that I'm also going to be looking to as well.
Yes. Thank you so much, Farouk. We thoroughly enjoyed that session. So please, if you have any comments, questions, please make use of the comment section, and also indicate, and I'll unmute you as well.
Okay. I can see that it seems there are more comments than questions in the chat box. And yes, sorry, sometimes it's a challenge it's a challenge getting data. And yes, I can see your question around local council elections and the data. My sincere apologies. It was a huge task doing the research to get data about local council elections and the participation of women and young people when we did that as well. But my slides are definitely going to be shared. I know that's been a bit of a very popular request as well. And after the training, the slides will be shared. But thank you, Honorable Barrister Olufunke Hassan as well for your comments in the chat box as well. Chiamaka, your question. I am looking for your question. I'm not sure which question is yours. But if Chiamaka, if you can just drop your question in the chat box, we'll definitely get to it and answer your question. Okay. I can see Chiamaka's raised her hand. Please go ahead.
Okay, hi Ibrahim. Thank you for the session. I missed some part of it. Apologies, I joined in late. My question is, so I wasn't sure if this has been covered, but I wanted to clarify in terms of women participation and even just running for elective offices, where did they run from, right? So is it their state of origin or their state of marriage? Like, does that count? I mean, we saw some things recently on, say, for example, Nimi Akinkugwe's appointments recently and all the drama that went on with that. So I just wanted to clarify that. How does this work for married women, for example?
So great question, and we spoke about it. And like I said, it seems there's no hard and fast rule about it. I remember former Senator Daisy Danjuma, who is married to someone from Taraba, had to go back to Edo State to run for election and win. But there's also Senator Grace Jackson Bent, who previously, even though she's from the southwest of Nigeria, she's married to someone from Adamawa State, and she represented Adamawa in the Senate. There's also Senator Binta Masigarba, who previously was a House of Representatives member from Kaduna, where her husband is from, and then also came back to Adamawa, where she is from, to run for office. So it's hard to give an answer and say this is the hard and fast rule and this is how it must be done. And it seems like it is where you have more of a sphere of influence, which is what it seems like, where you can run or where there is more acceptability of your candidacy. Again, I know that one time a piece of legislation was introduced in the National Assembly to try and solve this issue, but unfortunately it didn't pass. So it definitely is a challenge, and especially for women who want to run for office, who are married outside of their state of origin, it makes it much more of a challenge for them. Sorry, I cannot give you a definite answer about how it works, but I think I saw Honorable Favor, who was on the call and was making some comments, and maybe if she wants to share some of her experiences as well, she can share that. Thank you, Chairman. I saw, okay, Siwese had raised her hand. Can you unmute yourself? Can we hear you, Siwese? Okay, Tino, I think you had raised your hand earlier. So
hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, all right. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. It's been quite insightful.
Thank
so
you.
many of us actually, I don't know, but especially me, I've actually been so undecided. I don't have this flair for politics, but you know, the fact that you're working in the private sector, you just felt, okay, probably this is not the time and all. But listening to the call and also the politician that just spoke, the female politician that just spoke, it's somehow inspiring. And then my question is this: what are the standard requirements for joining political parties? Because I understand that it could be party-based, as in the requirements generally could be party-based, but I just believe that there should be some standard requirements across board. So if I can have maybe idea of what is required, and two, is it late to join a political party? I joined the meeting late though, I think about 15 or 20 minutes late. So if it has been addressed before, I wouldn't mind getting some insight in that line.
Thank you, Tino, and I'm glad that this has helped to inspire you some way, and I hope that you actually do run for office very soon. To answer a few of your questions, there really are no requirements to run for a political party. I think you just have to be of a legal age, and you can register the party and join. In some places, political parties have wings in tertiary institutions, for instance, just so that they start to breed and start to mobilize young people to join their political parties. So you're never too young to register to join a political party, and you can join now. I think it would be great to have you join a political party now, as you start to build on that inspiration after this call to run for office. And I really hope, even if you're not going to run now, you can join a political party and start to effect change from within your political party as well, which is something that we really hope to see. And thank you for joining the call.
Yes, so sorry, Ibrahim. So on the back of that, you know, some of us were actually disenfranchised last time. We couldn't get a voter's card. Isn't that required for such registration?
To register to join a political party, I am not sure. I might have to refer to, I know I saw Honorable Favor had raised her hand to speak. She might just be able to answer that. But I know that even with the registration and revalidation exercise currently ongoing with some of the political parties, there was a requirement for your voter's card, your voter identification number. So it might be helpful to be a registered voter, but to run for office, you also have to be registered in that constituency where you want to run. Okay, Honorable Lufunke said APC does not require a voter's card to register as a member of the party. So thank you very much, Ma, for that contribution. I can see Honorable Favor has raised her hand. Okay. And if I can do the introduction, Honorable Favor is a member in the Ondo State House of Assembly, and we're very glad that we can have you on the call. And she's a young woman, so we're doubly proud of her.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Honorable.
Special thanks to Mr. Farouk. You've always been part of our strengths, and you've been really impacting into us positively. We so appreciate you. On a quick note, am I audible enough?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Quick one, let me respond to the earlier questions about the requirements to run for an office or to be able to participate in any election. Those are different questions, actually. You know, we all know that in Nigeria, to be voted in or voted for, you have to acquire the age of 18 upward, which we're all aware. But in terms of contesting for any political office, the requirement that will be met, which depend on the party constitution. As we all know that we have different parties in Nigeria, so is their constitution varies. Someone said the APC doesn't need the voters card to register. I doubt it, because you can look at in view of their recent validation of a membership, you will see that there's a column where voters card number is required, where you just have to place it. So if it's not important or if it's not part of the requirement, they wouldn't have stated it. And as an APC member, and I got elected through the party, APC as a political party, I want to assure you, I want to tell you that it's so important that you have your voters card. It's one of the requirements. So in one sentence, you have to attain the age of 18 upward before you can vote or be voted for. And your local government too, I mean your local government of fair region, you have to be identified with your ward. You have to belong to a particular ward, a particular unit, local government. What I mean is that you can't come from abroad or from from US now and say you want to come down to those states to come and vote or to come and be voted for. There is need for you to go down to those grassroots, register yourself, be identified with a unit. After a unit, a ward, after ward, your local government in particular. So that will show that you are a potential and a reliable person to be voted for. So those are the requirements about you going into election. Then we understand that there are many other formulas and prerequisites side that want us to fulfill if at all you want to contest, aside the one I just mentioned on party expectation. So I said it that different parties in Nigeria have different constitution. So if you have interest in one party, maybe PDP, APC, or APGA, there is need for you to study their constitution to know the rules and regulation guiding them. Because at times some constitution will state that you must be 3 years in a party. I mean, you must have been known to be in that party for 3 years or above before you can even show your interest. When you can showcase your interest or concept of contesting, you must have spent minimum of 3 years. So some party constitution stated that in their constitution. So there's need for every one of us, I mean, anybody that is interested, to ensure that he study the constitution so that to be certain of their rules and guidelines in order to contest. And one other thing that I want to answer here is about the area you are from. Mr. Farouk, am I on?
Yes, Ma, you're on. But if we can wrap up so that we can take some other questions. Thank you.
Okay. The other question about where you can contest from, maybe your origin or your your spouse area. I wrote it down there that it doesn't matter. It depends on where you can gather your influence, where your strength lies, when your supporters, I mean, both sides, you can both contest from both sides. Yes. But at times, in Nigeria that we have different cultural and traditional expectation which you have to meet. So there's need for every one of us to study the area. I mean, the angle, maybe from your husband angle or from your own paternal and maternal side, to study what they require and what you can easily meet up with before you make your decision. So thank you for this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Favor. I think someone still had their hands up. Okay. If we Bukola, did you still have
Bukola,
yes.
Yes. Okay, so two things. The first thing, voters card and all of that. You mentioned lastly, like for people to contest and vote, I think your card must be from that area, right? Because I know that elections and voters registration is always slumped in Nigeria, and that's what actually like even makes people back up. I registered in Ogun while I was 7, and I've been trying to change my card to bring it back to Ondo, where I'm from, for God knows how long. It has not been possible. The last election, for the governorship election, I think INEC didn't let people, so all those really complex and complicated processes actually pushes people away. Then that's one. Then the second thing, from your presentation about Aisha Osori's book, I think it's going to be a very great book. I would like to read it. The first thing you mentioned actually relates or resonates with me. So I have plans of running for office, and then because I'm only back at home in Ondo once in a while, and then last December I was at home and I decided to like meet people from the ward and all those things. And like you said, once people know you want to run for office, you're an aspirant, you become their benefactor. Everyone wants to please you. And to be honest with you, I spent a lot and I got really angry and I actually lost interest. Because for me, it was more like, wait, I'm not even a politician. I'm not taking money the way you people, like, of course, the way people have it in their heads, like politicians have money, they steal money, so they have money to throw around. No, I'm working for my own money, and I truly lost interest, and I just, for long, I've not been thinking about it, right? But being on this call now, maybe my interest will come back, right? And I'll reconsider and I'll probably get that book because I want to know how you're able to navigate that. Because I don't think I'm going to be willing to be throwing my hard-earned money all around. I don't have that kind of money. Let's even start from there. So to be able to know how to navigate that and know that, and let people know that you don't all of a sudden become their money spinning machine.
I totally agree. And that's why today we're not just sharing theoretical experiences, but also practical experiences. And I'm glad that Honorable Favor shared. And from sharing a little bit of your experience or trying to join partisan politics, you've seen some of the challenges that they face. I'm glad that this conversation has also raised a lot of other areas that we can continue to talk about with ElectHER, around campaign financing, around navigating political party dynamics, and all of that. But my appeal is not to be discouraged. The work that needs to be done has to be done. And the more we can get a lot of young women, especially young women, young people into our politics that bring a lot of energy and creativity and innovation, and we'll start to see a lot of things change, and this becomes the Nigeria that many of us heard about and have dreamt about it becoming the great country we all want it to become. Morenike, do we still have some questions? I know there was one question in the...
There's still a question in the chat box from an anonymous.
Oh, okay. I know, sorry, I can't pronounce the name, Jite, was asking around, some people seem to come to prominence and get into politics through appointed positions and then segue into elected roles through that. Can we comment about the women in appointed positions and whether that's meeting the quota? So I think there's a report, and I'll also maybe look for it and try and share it, that talks about women in appointed positions. Even though there is we're signatories to CEDAW and the Maputo Protocol, we've hardly ever gotten that 35% of women in appointed positions as well. I agree with you that it's a bit of a stepping stone that helps women to go from appointive positions and helps to build their capacity either in the party or in governance to now seek for elective office. And I think we must continue to encourage it. In many states, we've seen where state governors have also made a lot of appointments of women into their cabinets and into ministries, departments, and agencies, and that has increased the participation of women in appointing offices. But it's not just enough because an elective office shows that you hold the trust of your constituency, and your constituency majorly has agreed that you're going to represent their interests and you're going to legislate on their behalf and you're going to represent them. And so there's a bit of a difference about that. So while it's great to have women in appointive positions, I think it's even better to have more women in elective positions, and they kind of both complement each other as well. I'm still looking at the questions. I can see a lot of the questions around voter party registration and revalidation are being answered. And thank you very much. And the questions around mentorship. Moving forward, I'm sure with ElectHER that we're going to continue to do that. And please join the DTR community. The link is in the chat.
Yeah. Sorry, Farouk. I think there's also one question about clarifying as a married woman, location and constituencies that married women can run for elective office, i.e. from their states of origin or in states of marriage.
Yeah, I answered that, and
okay.
I know as well, spoke to it about as well. It's been a wonderful session. Thank you so much. It's been so participatory. Thank you, Morenike, for being such a great moderator as well. I know before we end, there's a survey. I'm not sure we can still get to play our video, but
yeah. But I'll share the link to the video by Yaga Africa in the comment section so people can go and watch it. It's a very interesting video and it shed more light as to experiences of women that have run for office and how, you know, they were able to kind of navigate that part. So yes, I'll share that in the comment section. And thank you so much, Farouk. That was a very insightful session. We also have 10 books of Aisha's Sori's books. So please kindly indicate in the comment section and we'll pick people randomly. So we just have 10 copies available. So if you would like one, please just drop a comment and then we would pick people randomly, winners for the books. So thank you so much, Farouk. It has been a great session, as we said. So future trainings for ElectHER, please join the Decide to Run community. ElectHER hosts the Decide to Run community for people aspiring for office. The link has been shared and I'm going to share it again. you need to join the community to be able to meet like minds, people that have run for office. So we have a whole lot in store. We have got guest live sessions where people that have run will come and share their experiences as well. We also have links to a lot of opportunities for people willing to run, and training opportunities, access to fellowships and things that you will find useful on your journey. So that's all in the Decide to Run community. We're looking forward to welcoming you. Also, in terms of future training, so as Bijoke had mentioned earlier, we'll be having these trainings on a monthly basis. So please register on time. Once you see the links, we'll be sharing the links as well to everyone that has joined this session. So the links to future trainings will be shared, information as well. And please follow us on all social media platforms that will be shared. All links will be shared online here. And please share the word. I think a lot of people, this has just really just made us understand that there are a lot of women willing to run for office, but they haven't just found that community or found that that hold for them to be able to run for office. So we're hoping you will share this efforts, the efforts we're all putting it as ElectHER. We can't do it on our own. So we're encouraging everybody to please join this community so we can keep on pushing this narrative forward. Also, please tweet about the experiences and we'll retweet you back. We'll retweet back the polls. There's also a survey, final survey that will be shared now. So please take some few minutes to participate in this, just to kind of get a sense of how you enjoyed the training and what we can pretty much improve on in future trainings, for future trainings as well, and get your understanding of all of the key concepts that have been shared during the training. Any more comments, please drop it in the comment section. We'll give some few minutes before we end the call for people to drop any other comments or questions they might have, and also to share the links for to everybody as well. Yes, so please drop your, with the emails, please drop your emails if you want a copy of the book, and we'll be in touch with you. Thank you so much to everybody that has joined. We had a great session, and we hope to see you in future sessions as well, training sessions. Have a good afternoon. Thank you, Farouk. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I can see people are dropping their emails. We'll be in touch with you on how to get the copy of the book. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Marinike.
Thank you so much, Farouk. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm noting down all of the emails as well, so we'll be in touch. Thank you.